Did you know that the flu can kill? It's not just a heavy cold. Over the last 2 years, more than 18,000 people have died. If you're eligible for the flu vaccine, and you'll find out in a bit, it means if you get the flu, you'll have milder symptoms and you're more likely to recover. My name's Dr. Liz O'Riordan. I'm a breast surgeon who's had breast cancer, and I was meant to have a flu and a COVID-19 vaccine last year. My cancer had just come back and the treatment was weakening my immune system. Getting flu or COVID-19 could make me seriously ill. I could even die. And I'm embarrassed to tell you this, but I didn't get the injections. I was fed up with all the blood tests and tablets I was having, and I knew it was stupid and maybe even dangerous, but I never went for my jabs. The last year I was lucky. I got the flu and spent 4 weeks recovering, but I didn't end up in hospital. This year, I might not be so lucky. There's a chance that I could die if I get infected again, and I've got too much to do. So don't be like me. Watch the rest of this video and find out why the flu vaccine is so important. So what is flu? Well, it's an acute respiratory infection caused by influenza viruses. The viruses target your windpipe in your lungs. The flu season happens every year, normally in the winter when we spend more time indoors. It is very contagious, and it's spread when someone with flu coughs or sneezes. You can also catch it by touching surfaces where the viruses have landed. What are the symptoms? Well, with a cold, you normally have a stuffy or a runny nose and a sore throat, and the symptoms develop gradually. You can still carry on with your day-to-day life. But with the flu, you can have a sudden fever, a persistent dry cough, a sore throat, headache, aches and pains in your joints and muscles, and extreme tiredness. And you might need to spend several days in bed to recover. Is getting flu dangerous? Well, if you're fit and well, you should start to feel better in around a week. You should rest at home and drink plenty of liquids and take painkillers if you have a high temperature, a headache, or your muscles and joints are sore. Most people recover without needing hospital treatment. However, if you are older than 65 or have certain long-term health conditions, you might end up in hospital. And the flu can then lead to pneumonia, sepsis, and make any existing medical conditions worse, like diabetes, emphysema, and heart disease. And there is a risk that you could die. It really is that serious. Can you avoid catching flu? The best way to avoid catching flu is by having the vaccination before the flu season starts. If you do get flu after your vaccine, your symptoms are generally milder and you have a faster recovery. The flu vaccination helps to provide the best protection. But the flu virus is unpredictable as it constantly evolves, and there are several different strains or types. Each year, experts analyse the latest data to work out which strains are most likely to cause the flu in the upcoming winter. Vaccines are then made to match them as closely as possible. Even if the flu vaccine doesn't perfectly match a strain, it usually provides some protection against it. The vaccines are given in the autumn, ideally before flu cases start to rise, but you can continue to get vaccinated throughout the winter. Who should have the flu vaccine? The flu vaccine is offered to anyone who is more likely to end up in hospital if they get infected, and it's also offered to people who are more likely to catch it. The free flu vaccine is recommended for those people who are pregnant, aged 65 or over, aged 6 months to under 65 years and in a clinical risk group listed on the NHS website, children aged 2 or 3 on the 31st of August 2024, and all primary school-aged children and secondary school-aged children in years 7 to 11. Those in the clinical risk group will include people with some long-term health conditions, and that includes children and babies over the age of 6 months. And these include a heart problem like coronary heart disease or heart failure, lung conditions that affect your breathing, like bronchitis, emphysema, COPD, cystic fibrosis, and asthma managed by steroids. If you have a lowered immunity due to a disease or treatment, such as steroid medication or cancer treatment, liver disease, such as cirrhosis and hepatitis, a stroke or a transient ischemic attack, some conditions that affect your brain or your nervous system, like Parkinson's disease, motor neuron disease, multiple sclerosis, cerebral palsy, diabetes, or Addison's disease. It's recommended for people who live with a learning disability, and if you have a problem with your spleen, such as sickle cell disease, or you've had your spleen removed. If you have a medical condition that isn't on this list, your GP can assess you to see whether you should have the flu vaccine. The vaccine is also recommended for people living in a residential or nursing home, anyone who receives the carer's allowance, anyone who's the main carer of an older or disabled person, if you are living with someone who has a lowered immunity due to disease or treatment like cancer, and to all frontline health and social care workers. Does everyone with cancer need the flu jab? So your immune system is lowered whilst you are having chemotherapy, some targeted therapies and immunotherapy drugs, and long-term steroid treatment. Your body doesn't have the natural defences to fight flu, and that is why it is vital that you have the flu vaccination. Your specialist may recommend that you do not have a vaccine during treatment if you have a blood cancer, and cancers of the blood include leukemia, lymphoma, and myeloma. Now, your immune system normally recovers in the first few months after stopping treatment, but it may be low for several years. If you don't know whether you should have the flu vaccine, ask your medical team. Now, if you've had lymph nodes removed from your armpit as part of your cancer treatment, like I have, there is no evidence that having injections in your affected arm can cause lymphedema. If you don't want to use that arm, you could have the injection in your other arm or in your thigh instead. When should you have the flu jab? So it's best to have your flu vaccination in the autumn or early winter before the flu rates tend to increase. Remember, you need it every year, so don't assume you are protected because you had one last year. So flu season usually peaks in December and January, so starting adult vaccinations from October ensures that those most at risk are protected during the colder months when the viruses spread more easily. What if you are having cancer treatment? So ideally, you would have your vaccine before you start any cancer treatment, but this isn't always possible. Your oncologist may advise you to have the vaccine during treatment, and they will tell you when to have it. It might depend on several things, like the level of white cells in your blood during chemotherapy. You might have it at the end of one cycle, just before you start the next. Your oncologist will let you know when the best time to have the flu vaccine is. If you've had a stem cell transplant, your specialist will usually suggest you wait about 6 months before you have the flu vaccine. Again, the length of time will depend on your individual situation. How do you get your flu vaccine? So if you're eligible for an NHS flu vaccine, you can book a flu vaccination appointment at a pharmacy online. You can use the NHS app if you're aged 18 or over. You can find a local pharmacy that offers NHS flu vaccinations. That's where I have mine. Or you can contact your GP surgery to book an appointment. Some people may be able to get vaccinated through their school, maternity service, care home, or their employer if they are a frontline health or social care worker. Can you have your flu and COVID-19 vaccinations at the same time? It is safe to have the flu vaccine at the same time as other vaccines, such as the COVID-19 one. How are the injections given? Adults have the vaccine as an injection into the muscle, normally in the upper part of your arm. If you have lymphedema, permanent arm swelling, you can use the other arm or your upper outer thigh. Children normally have the vaccine as a spray into their nose, but some might need to have an injection if, for example, they have a condition that causes immunosuppression or live with someone with a severely weakened immune system. What are the side effects of the flu vaccine? The most common side effects of the adult flu vaccine are pain or soreness where the injection was given, a slightly raised temperature, and general aches and pains. They are mild and they get better in 1 to 2 days. The flu vaccine cannot give you flu because it does not contain live flu viruses. The more serious side effects include a severe allergic reaction called anaphylaxis, and this is very rare. The person who vaccinates you will be trained to deal with this if it happens. Does the flu vaccine work? So the flu vaccine will protect you against the most common types of flu viruses. If you do catch the flu after getting vaccinated, it's likely to be mild and not last as long. And the vaccine usually takes up to 14 days to work. Why do you need it every year? The protection given by the flu vaccine goes down with time and it doesn't last forever. And the strains of the flu virus can change every year, and that's why it's updated. Last year's vaccines might not protect you against this year's strains, and that's why it's important to get it every year. Is there any reason why you shouldn't get the flu jab? The only reason is if you have had a serious allergic reaction to the vaccine or any of its ingredients, or if your specialist clinician or oncologist has told you not to. If you have a fever, the vaccination may be delayed until you are feeling better. Do you need a COVID-19 vaccine as well? The threat of winter viruses is real. Tens of thousands of people die every year because of these two illnesses, and many of those deaths could have been prevented if everyone eligible had their flu and COVID-19 vaccines. New figures from the UK HSA estimate that over the past 2 winters, there were over 19,500 deaths associated with COVID-19, even though the pandemic is over. The NHS is recommending a COVID-19 and a flu vaccine for all adults aged 65 and over, all pregnant women, all care home residents, all frontline health and social care workers, and all staff in care homes for older adults. It's also recommended for people aged 6 months to 64 years with long-term health conditions, like I mentioned earlier in the video. Why do you need a COVID-19 vaccine? The COVID-19 viruses can change and vaccine protection fades over time. It's important to top up your protection with the latest vaccine if you're eligible, and this protection will last throughout the winter. This reduces serious symptoms and speeds up your recovery if you do catch COVID-19. It also reduces your chances of ending up in hospital by around 50% compared to those who haven't had the latest vaccine. What vaccines are used? So the COVID-19 vaccines used by the NHS do not contain any animal products, including eggs. The NHS uses 2 COVID-19 vaccines. They are Pfizer-BioNTech and Moderna. Do you need a COVID-19 vaccine if you have cancer? If you are currently having chemotherapy, radiotherapy, some targeted or immunotherapy drugs, or long-term steroids, you should consider having a COVID-19 vaccine. You are more at risk of catching COVID-19 and also becoming seriously ill, and that's because your cancer treatment has weakened your immune system. You should not need to delay your cancer treatment to have the vaccine, and your cancer team will be able to advise you if and when you should have it. Can you have COVID-19 at the same time as the flu vaccine? You can have the winter COVID-19 vaccine at the same time as the flu vaccine. You normally have one in each arm. If you have lymphedema or you only have one arm, you can have both injections in the same arm as long as they are 2.5 centimetres apart, or you can have one injection in your thigh. What are the side effects of a COVID-19 vaccine? The most common side effects of the COVID-19 vaccine are mild, and they tend to get better within a week. And they can include a sore arm from the injection, feeling tired, a mild headache, feeling achy. If you or your child get side effects, rest and take some painkillers to help you feel better. More serious side effects, such as a severe allergic reaction, are very rare, and the person who vaccinates you will be trained to deal with this immediately. There have been rare cases of inflammation of the heart, called myocarditis, reported after the COVID-19 injection. Most people who had this recovered following rest and simple treatments. The vaccine cannot give you a COVID-19 infection. The RSV vaccine. If you are aged 75 to 79, or you are at least 28 weeks pregnant, you'll be offered a vaccine to protect you against the respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV. There is evidence that this could prevent thousands of A&E attendances, hospital admissions, and serious cases this winter alone. If you're eligible for an RSV vaccine, it's more effective to have it on a different day to your COVID-19 and flu vaccines. And having these 3 will help the UK avoid a triple-demic of viruses this winter. How does a vaccine work? So vaccines help the body learn how to defend itself from disease without the dangers of a full-blown infection. The adult flu vaccine uses dead viruses to imitate an infection. Because they are dead, they cannot make you ill. The dead viruses make your body's natural defences kick into gear. The COVID vaccine uses the genetic sequence for a special protein on the surface of the COVID virus. The active ingredient is called an antigen, and white blood cells in your immune system produce specific antibodies against it. The antibody attaches to the antigen, and this complex is recognised by different white blood cells, which then destroy it. And it takes about 2 weeks for the antibodies to appear. The recipe for the virus antibody is now stored in your white cells' memory banks. If you are exposed to the real virus, either the flu or COVID-19, your white cells can quickly make lots of antibodies against it. This means that you only have a mild infection. This is much safer than you getting flu without a vaccination. While your body takes 2 weeks to create enough antibodies naturally, you can become seriously ill. What about people who say the vaccines aren't safe? There are many anti-vaccine stories spread online through social media and podcasts and offline in newspaper headlines. You should always get your vaccine and health information from trusted sources, such as the NHS or the World Health Organization. The vaccine information on social media may not be based on scientific evidence, and it could put you and your child at risk of serious illness or even death. Vaccines undergo rigorous safety testing before being introduced, and they are also constantly monitored for side effects after they've been given. All the current evidence tells us that getting vaccinated is safer than getting the disease. The flu vaccines have been given to tens of millions of people, and they have a good safety record. Vaccines are safe. Have you had yours yet?